Good evening, everyone. I'm Tim Ward with Mechanical Hub Media. We're really excited to partner with Caleffi again this month for the Shop Talk Showdown webinar series. Tonight's episode will focus on a kit and caboodle of connections. Our host, Bob Hot Rod Rohr, will guide us through a variety of pipe connections, hopefully in an effort to determine the best connection for a common hydronic or plumbing install. Obviously, this is going to lead to the big Shop Talk Showdown. There, Hot Rod will moderate a spirited debate between Eric Aune, Cody, Mack, and Max Rohr as they tussle over their favorite connection type. After the showdown, we'll be joined by Alec Dietzel with Milwaukee Tool. He'll share his product insights as well as answer any of your questions. Lastly, thank you all for joining. Because of the overwhelming success of this showdown, one very lucky audience member is going to be winning a Milwaukee Tool M18 Force Logic press tool with one key. Hot Rod, the shop floor is all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Tim, for that nice intro. And yeah, we're packing a lot in tonight, folks. So strap on your seatbelts, and we're gonna move pretty fast here. So yeah, here's our typical. If you're having problems with the connection, it's a blurry or jumpy or something. Sometimes just log off and back on, and that can clear it up. At the end of the webinar, there'll be a little survey that comes across, and if you want the slides, copy of the slides, a PDF of it, we're glad to share that with you. And it will be up on our YouTube channel probably within a week. So if you want to look at it again or share it with somebody else, you'll find it on our YouTube channel. Okay. Yeah, and there's our team for tonight. This is going to be fun. Max is going to be helping me out, and Eric and Cody are going to come on a little bit later in the presentation and have a little bit of a showdown part of it and talk about their different favorite connections. So. And yeah, and they can jump in any time to help me here because I can't remember all this stuff anymore. So help me out, team, if you will. Thanks.
Sure.
And yeah, and so actually, this isn't just a tool giveaway. This is a kit. It includes the tongs and the battery and the charger. I mean, all the pictures you'll see shows the tool there. But this is a very nice gift from Milwaukee. Thanks so much for the team over at Milwaukee for giving that away tonight. So we'll do that towards the end. We've got a little wheel that we're going to spin so we can show it right on the screen so you can see that it's a fair contest here. Mary's going to plug some names, not your full name, of course, on a wheel and give it a spin. That'll be fun. All right. Yeah, and so we like to brag whenever we get an award. We'd like to brag about a little bit. So there's our angle mixer that we won the award at the HR Expo this year for the Innovation Award on that angle mixer valve. So we'd like to toot our horn whenever we can about that. Check it out if you haven't. It's a really nice, unique mixing valve that we have. Okay. Yeah, so that's what's going to be the next Shop Talk Showdown. We're going to talk about pressure reducing valves. I know sometimes when you say PRV, people say, well, is that a pressure relief valve or a pressure reducing valve? We are going to be talking about pressure reducing valves for the next showdown, about a month away, I guess, in April 26th. So put that on your schedule. And if you're a cracker and enjoy grams, go over to Instagram and you'll see that we've got a little contest going on over there. We're getting down to the final on the March Mania over there. We've got some nice giveaways and prizes for everybody that plays that game. So check it out if you're hanging out over there. So let's get down to the meat and potatoes here. We're going to talk about different types of connections. We're going to talk about some of the different options that Caleffi has to make different connections, how you can put different types of materials together with the connections that we offer. We'll talk about unions and how the fiber washers come into play there and how you can mix and match all these different fittings to, like I say, if you want to join different dissimilar tubes or something together. So yeah, we've got a lot of parts, a lot of things to share. So we're going to do as much as we can with the, you can see we've got the shop cam going over at Max's place showing some of the fittings. We'll pick them up and we'll demo some things a little bit as we go through here. All right. In a perfect world, this is how a fiber washer should work when you put it together on a union connection that uses just two flat surfaces, two brass or stainless steel, whatever the surface might be. That's really what that gasket should look like after you put it in there and you tighten it up. It should really stick to the surfaces that when you take it apart, it should actually delaminate the gasket as you see there. That's a perfect seal that's made with a fiber washer. Now, to get that to happen, you got to make sure there's no oil or grease on those connections when you put them together. You want to make sure that they line up, that they're not misaligned or skewed at a bad angle or something like that. Know that we did come out with a new washer this year. We've got a blue fiber instead of a green fiber. We made it a little bit thicker. Cody can help me out on this. And it's also a different material. And what changes it with a fiber washer is what's called the compression set of a washer. And what that is, it's kind of the flexibility of a washer. And what happens sometimes with these fiber washers, if you put them in there and you put a big channel locks or a big wrench on that and you tighten it, you squeeze all that compression set out of that washer. So now it doesn't have the ability, as that pipe gets hot and cold and there's a little bit of an expansion and contraction movement in that, if you squish it too hard and you make it a solid washer, it doesn't have that compression set. It doesn't have that ability to take up that temperature change. So most of the time people are over tightening these gaskets, or they've got a little misalignment, but we think we beefed it up a little bit with this new blue fiber, and those should be going out the door now. I don't know if they're out in all sizes yet, Cody, but we've got that in the common 1-inch G thread sizes, our most common thread, and those blue washers are going out the door.
There's actually a number of the models going out the door now as far as different sizes, but I think you hit the nail on the head. If it's a 1-inch union, leave your 2, 3, and 4 foot pipe wrenches at home. You don't need anything that big.
Actually, I think we got a little demo of that coming up a little bit later.
Cool.
I did at my shop in the Vice to show you just a couple tips and tricks about using those fiber washers. So, all right. So now there's most of the rest of the world, to be honest with you, uses straight threads, a BSP thread. There isn't an NPT thread really in Europe or most of the other countries. I think the US and Canada are about the only place that use a tapered NPT thread. So different ways if you come across this thread, and I don't know, some of you guys that have been doing this a long time like me might remember when Badaris and Viessmann first came into the US market, there were straight connections on a lot of their connections to their boilers, connections to their fittings and stuff like that. And sometimes they came with that little gob of, looks like a part of a wig or something there. It was actually hemp that they sent along with those. And people said, what are we supposed to do with this? You wrap it on the thread, you smoke it, what's going on with this stuff? So occasionally you'll still find a thread coming across with maybe a newcomer in the US market that has European roots, might still be sending over some BSP thread. So you can, in fact, use hemp if you can find it. In fact, that's a hardware store that I was over in Italy, and I walked in the hardware store just to see what was in there one day, and you can see a big gob of hemp on the wall there. That thread in the center is actually a hemp thread that at Caleffi, Italy, we still make hemp threads, and I don't know if you can see it, but it's got a little knurled finish to the threads. And in fact, I saw some of you guys that are on Instagram watch Bruno. I saw him actually make a hemp thread with a file and rough up a thread so it holds the hemp better. So when you wrap it on there and you screw it into the female fitting, it doesn't just ungob. Another way that you can put that thread together, if you come across it, is that Loctite thread. It's almost like dental floss at number 55. You can still find it. I saw that on Amazon. Somebody said they weren't making it anymore, but I looked around and it's still out there. But it reminds me of dental floss, and you wrap it right into the root of the thread on those straight threads and screw it in there. You shouldn't have to put any pipe dope or anything else on it. And a third way, if you come across this fitting that you want to put together, is to use a Loctite. And there's a couple different Loctites that we actually use in Milwaukee to assemble our manifolds. A lot of our fittings that are put together in the factory before we send them out to you. We glue them together. Basically, that's what Loctite is. It's an anaerobic glue. It's just super glue is really what it is at the end of the day. It goes off in the absence of oxygen. So when it goes into a thread, that's what makes it go off. So those are a couple different options if you come across a straight thread. And actually, if you take a ball valve apart, the way they assemble a ball valve, I don't have one right here, those are actually Loctited together. That's how they make that seal when they assemble valves at the factory. And I think the next slide might show so there's our assembly bench in Milwaukee at Caleffi, Milwaukee, and you can see those are the two different types of Loctite we use, and Cody will help me out on this a little bit. One you can see is a thread sealant, and one's more of a locker, and one's more of a hard set than the other. And I don't know when they use which one on putting things together. Cody, do you remember what the procedure is? They use it?
Yeah, so the 545 is going to be just a sealant, okay? And when you talk about these BSP threads and everything like that, they don't have that taper. Well, there is actually tapered BSP threads, but like an NPT thread, it's actually sealing on the threads. It's binding up. But when you've got a straight thread or BSP thread, it's got a spiral leak path through the threads that when you're putting it together, if there's not a sealing washer in place. And so that 545 will basically stop that spiral leak path through the threads. Now, for those pieces of equipment that we really don't want you guys in the field taking apart, or we want to just at least make it interesting for you, we use the 272, which is on the right there. That's a thread sealant and a locker. And I think it's important to point out the fact that with Loctite, everybody thinks about it as, you know, from a mechanical kind of means. You think of blue Loctite and red Loctite. You think of the stuff that maybe comes apart later and the red stuff that you never want to come apart later. But Loctite makes a whole bunch of really cool stuff. So just keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I went to the Loctite site. There's probably 50 different models of it.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
greens, there's blues. There's, like I say, most ball valves, when I take them apart, have a green Loctite or a green brand. I don't know if it's a Loctite brand. Now, that being said, if you come across something that you absolutely need to take apart because you want to turn it a different way or something, if you warm that up with a torch, not as hot as if you're trying to solder it, but just start warming up, and you'll actually start to smell it after it gets warm. You can actually, be careful to be warm, but you can actually take a Loctite and even the 272 connection apart. We've had guys said they want to flip the air vent over on a manifold or something like that, and you can warm it up a little bit and take it apart and then brush it off and re-glue it together, basically. So, yeah, that's what I know about Loctite. And so the most common thread used in Europe and a lot of boilers, as you see one of the boilers right here, I don't forget what brand is that, a little Lochinvar or something, you can see all those places in there that use that 1-inch G thread. And it really is the same diameter. If you thread a piece of 1-inch steel pipe, black pipe, it's that diameter, but of course that'll be a tapered thread. With a straight thread, our nut would go on that, but it needs to have a washer in it to make a seal. It's not a ground joint union like a black iron union or something where you got a taper and you actually can seal it without a fiber washer. There needs, every one of those connections you see in that drawing there is a 1-inch G thread that needs to have that fiber washer in between it. Now, on the plus side, the beauty of that type of fitting is you can take it apart. So if you had to service that or had to replace that heat exchanger or maybe that diverting valve or something on the bottom, take it out to service it or replace it. That's the nice thing about having a union connection. You do need to use a new fiber washer every time you take it apart. But when you go over to Europe, all the circulators over there are put together with this union thread. There are no two-bolt flanges over there. I think, again, the U.S. is probably the only market for that two-bolt flange type of circulating pump. Everything else over there. And there's actually 3 different sizes of that G thread that you'll find on the pumps. There's a smaller one than our 1-inch G thread, a 3/4 probably called. The 1-inch is the most common, and you'll see a bigger thread. Some of our solar pump stations have those union body pumps in them too. So yeah, you should learn to love this fitting because they're not going away. The more we get European boilers coming into the market, and the more the U.S. market that goes over there for boilers, you're going to see more of that connection in their assemblies. So this is what I learned, you know, after I learned from Caleffi that you're over tightening your fiber washers and that's why you're having issues with them. I went online, I found this company, I think they're up in Kansas City, Martin Tool Company, Martin Forge. They actually make these wrenches in a forge up there in the US. And it's a short wrench. You can see it's only about whatever your hand is, maybe 5-6 inches across there. So with that, you don't tend to over tighten them, and they make them metric sizes. So you can find one that exactly fits all the Caleffi nuts, which I think is a 37 millimeter. 1.5 inches is just a little bit bigger. It'll fit, but it's got a little bit of a slop in it. But that's another tool to have in your toolbox if you use a lot of these fittings and you don't want to over tighten them and you don't want to mark them up either. Sometimes if you put a channel locks and you keep scooting around on it, you start to chew away the brass a little bit. So you can find these on Amazon. Actually, it looks like an Amazon page right there that you can buy that Martin. It's a real thin wrench too. It's called a lock nut wrench. So if you have to put 2 wrenches against one another to lock 2 nuts against one another, it's made real thin like that. And that was nice because it fit on our solar collectors when we were doing solar thermal. It would fit between the two. We could back up the the copper that's in the solar collector and use this thin wrench right next to it. So they're not very expensive either. So these are what we have to offer right now for different tail pieces that have that 1-inch G thread connection on it. So we've got PEX, we've got press, we've got sweat, we've got male and female threaded versions. We've got 1/2 through 3/4. Some of those actually, you can next maybe up in your shop cam there. If it's a long tail piece, you can put a check valve in it. So if you want to use it as a check valve on an assembly or on a pump or something, there's an example of a press one, and you can see it's machined, the bore is machined in the center, and a check valve would snap in there. And it's the same check valve that you see in all the circulator pumps these days. We get them from Neopearl, actually the same size, the same metric size, and they just snap right in there. Now, one thing I will caution you, if you're going to use a sweat tail piece with a check sweat it on before you snap the check in, or you'll melt the check valve, because they are just a polymer or plastic type of thing. So there's an example of one that's meant to have a check valve. So of all those different tail pieces, what I tried to do on, I don't know if you can see on the little unistrut brackets that I have there, is the ones that you can get with a check valve. I tried to stack the little check valve on the bolt of the unistrut clamp there. That I've got those holding on. So I'm going to make some display cases for our reps, and maybe for some of the other people that want them. I just get some fiberglass strut, which is nice because it's light and it doesn't mark up your hands. And that's what I've got there on the right, is a piece of fiberglass strut, and I just put a bunch of them on so you can see the different options. So, and notice too that on the right that we have both the expansion PEX fitting as well as the crimp fitting. And a lot of people prefer that expansion fitting on hydronic, so you don't reduce the bore too much. Yeah, there you go. We've got both options available. What else on that? Yeah, I think we're up to about 30 different 1-inch G-thread connections that we offer. And if yeah, I should have sent this over to you, Max, for the webcam, but this is another piece that we made. I forgot to put it in there. That's a stainless steel 1-inch by 1-inch union. So you could put it between any two fittings that you see on there, and you can also, I can show you can put a check valve in this. So this could be a union, or it could be a check valve. And if you wanted to go from copper to PEX, or pick any two that you see on the wall there on that little display, you could connect them to one another and make a union that you could service, a component or a part by putting that little stainless steel barrel in the center of them. So, and of course, washers on them.
And one of the things that a lot of people will do too is that they'll use the Caleffi, this is a pressure reducing valve. They'll use that as the transition, so you could have PEX out and start with press or NPT in, and then you have to have a specific fitting to make that transition.
Yeah, and I think we're up to, I mean, Cody, maybe you can remind me, maybe 12 or 15 different components that Caleffi makes that uses a 1-inch G-thread. Now our zone valves use it, all our mixing valves use it, our balancing valves use it, our Legio mix valve uses that same fitting. So you could, like Max said, if you wanted to put 3 different types of tube to a 3-way valve, you could have copper and PEX and steel, whatever you want to mix and match them. So what's happening is a lot of our wholesalers are buying just our bodies. Instead of buying a zone valve and a sweat and a thread and a press and an inverted flare and all the different things, they buy just the body with the 2-inch or the 2 1-inch G threads on both ends, and then they can make it whatever they want. And by the way, this will fit other brands. If you buy Honeywell or Taco or some other mixing valve, it's going to be that same 1-inch G thread, because they make them all with that 1-inch G thread. So you could use this fitting on some other brand if you wanted to have that versatility to mix and match your connection types.
Yeah, Bob, we even have an option too with one of our mixing valves, our tank mixer that we call it, and it's got female NPT, so you can strap it right onto a 40-gallon or 50-gallon water heater coming out of the 3/4-inch dielectric nipples, and then we've got options on the outlet side to go to press or sweat or whatever you're looking for. And so, I mean, we already make those kits. I've even seen Eric even post about it on Instagram, where he actually has multiple different fitting types to go from one side to the other on one of our angle mixing valves too, for that matter.
Yeah, that's a good point, Cody. In fact, that's the female on the bottom right there on that picture on the thing is a 3/4 FIP to 1-inch G-thread union tailpiece, I guess is what the official word. But I don't know if you can reach down that case I left you, Max. There's also a gauge well or tailpiece that we have. So if you wanted to put a temperature gauge on anything that has a 1-inch G-thread, we've got a 1-inch G-thread union on one end. It's got a gauge and a dry well that you can snap out, and then male 1-inch G. There you go. Yeah. So that tailpiece is available too. So then you can put any fitting with a temperature gauge if you want to, adjust or monitor temperature on the system. That's a good view of it. Thanks. So if you're looking for a unique fitting or something special, or you get a European boiler that you can't figure out how to get a connection onto it, we could probably have you covered. Okay. Oh, I did have the barrel there, so that you probably a better view of it there. So that's, and actually we make that in Milwaukee. We've got little machine shops. When we do small runs, less than 5,000 or so, the factory doesn't like to do short runs, so we can make those here in the U.S. so we can get them out pretty quickly. And it's stainless steel, so you don't have the issue worrying about the low lead brass alloy if you want to use it on a domestic water application. Do we have them
Yeah,
different sizes though, Cody, or just
I was
one
going to say, yeah, no, we've got a bunch of different sizes. We've got 1/2 inch all the way to 2 inch. They are low lead. They're NSF 61, so they can be used in potable as well as hydronic applications. So if you're looking for a good serviceable check valve, this is your ticket right here, because we all know sooner or later if something gets stuck in there, you're going to need to take it apart. And with those unions on either side, it's pretty gravy to take them apart.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a pretty nice fitting that can, again, you can mix and match your connections on the ends of that. Yeah, there you go, Max. And there's a PRV that we'll be talking about next month, by the way. That's our new pressure reducing valve with the gauge option on it and 2 different connections to it. That's a new GoPro camera that we just got for the shop cam. That's a really, what I'm seeing is a really nice clear picture on that from what we've done in the past, trying to use our phone and different things. So that was a good tip from a XS seminar that I attended last week. They said, get this new GoPro G8 or whatever it is. It's pretty high tech. Okay. Yeah, so there's the page in our catalog that shows you all the different options. Basically what I've just been showing you there on the little demo case, that's the part number for them. And over there on the very left column, it shows all the different valves that it fits. So you can see our zone valves or Legio mix valves, angle mix, whatever the product number is, and it shows you all the different options that you have for fittings for Section 8 of the catalog, which is also online. If you don't have a hard copy of our new catalog, you can go online and find that too.
So the common one with all those is that middle 1-inch nut is kind of what that's referring to, that goes all the way down that list.
Yeah, those are all the 1-inch nut ones. Okay. And then we have a page that shows you pictures of them. So if you don't understand, okay, 1-inch G thread by PEX by whatever, we just try and give you a little picture of what they look like. And then again, any one that looks longer is one that typically allows you to put the check valve in it. Okay. All right, so this is the little demo I did. There's a couple of those fittings that we have that if you have a 1-inch pipe size connection, you can't get the nut over because the hole in the nut's not big enough to go over the 1-inch pipe and go over the flange. So we make what's called a drop. I call it a drop nut. Some people call it a slip nut. But I made a little demo because people don't understand, well, how does a nut go on? Or, you know, I opened the box and the nut's not on my tailpiece anymore. Did it break? What happened? So we'll see if we can get this to play, and I think it'll explain it better than trying to explain it without a picture.
So here's an example of a 3/4 press tailpiece that goes to a 1-inch G thread or a slip nut. And these nuts, slip nut or drop nut, they're sometimes called. Notice how it's cutaway here at the bottom, cutaway here at the top, big cutaway, small cutaway. This nut will only go on here one way. You got to put the big part on first and it'll just drop on. If you try and put it on the other way, it's not going to go, and if you force it, you're going to break it. So get your nut on and get whatever fitting you're going to attach to that, push it in there like that, tighten it up, just take it to hand tight. And once you get it to hand tight, you just need to go a little bit beyond that. I like to use a small short-handled wrench so you don't over tighten that and distort that nut. These Martin wrenches, about a 8-inch long wrench, 37 millimeter, fits those nuts perfectly, and just maybe 1/8 of a turn past the finger tight, and you should be set to go. Shouldn't leak.
Yeah, so that's the point I was trying to make about not over tightening the gasket and ruining that compression set on it. So just a little bit past finger tight should be enough to seal it with a new washer and the clean surfaces and stuff. So, but yeah, that's what's called the drop nut. And so when you see that nut, look in the end of it, and you'll see the cutaway, and it falls right on one way, the other way it won't go on. It looks like, gosh, this should fit, and it'll break the nut if you force it on. So that's how and that's not a new connection. People have been using that for years. Again, when you have to get over that, the flange on that 1-inch G fitting.
I will say too, Bob, that when
Go ahead, Cody.
I was going to say, I was just going to mention, when you're using that slip nut too, it's really important too that, you know, when you look at kind of the flange on the actual tailpiece, there's kind of like a little lip on there, and it's tough to see sometimes, but when you've got that slip nut on there, make sure that if you got it a little cockeyed, it'll push on one side, but it won't push on the other. And so if you don't have it on that little lip, then it's going to be a little cockeyed there, and then it's not going to seal up where the hood. So definitely make sure that you're centered on there, and you'll see it, you'll feel it too if you start moving it around a little bit.
You can kind of twist it, and sometimes you feel it fall into the right spot there, and then it should twist all the way around. And then also the wrench that you mentioned is good too, so you don't squeeze these tail pieces, the G-thread nut into an oval. If you just like really, bite on that with a channel lock or something like that, you can take it out around.
What you guys don't know is Max is also known as Hercules. He can crush a union nut with a single hand.
Sure, I've got the big wrench with me today.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially that slip nut. It's a pretty thin brass, and you can egg shape it pretty easily especially with the channel locks. If you got a big channel lock you put on there, you think you got it tight. In fact, you egg shaped it and you didn't tighten it against the gasket. So the little open end type of wrench, I think, is a better wrench for it. So.
Well, and I know too, Bob, I was going to say, I know Rigid and Lennox also make like smooth jaw adjustables where, for use on a lot of your chrome fittings for your flush valves and things like that on urinals. Those things are perfect for these because then you don't leave teeth marks all over the union nuts when you're using your channel locks and everything else. And they usually they open up pretty wide too, and they're not terribly long because you don't usually need them for, a lot of torque.
Yeah, we should
hook up on it a little bit. You want to hold it that close if you're using one of those wrenches and not at the other end of a 10-inch wrench or something like that.
No breaker bar. No breaker bar.
Pipe wrenches. All right. Yeah, so I guess that's just an example of what I was saying, all the different products that take that 1-inch G thread that we offer, and again, competitors offer similar products so that our fitting would fit on that. Nicest one is that little quick setter on the lower right, because we sell a lot of those, and people like to put them on a steel manifold on a speedy head or something like that, and go to PEX or go to copper, or you could even use 2 different pipe sizes. If you had a speedy header that you had a 1-inch connection on and you wanted to go 3/4 PEX out of the other end of it, you just buy the tailpiece for the type of tubing you use and also the size of it. So you could use it as a reducing fitting also by choosing the tailpiece accordingly. Yeah, all right. Yeah, just some more of the products there. That's where I got first introduced to this G-thread, is in those solar pump stations on the lower right there, because that whole thing is assembled, and that's an example of a union body pump in there. I don't know if that's a Velo or a Grund. It looks like a Velo on that one that has the 1-inch G-thread on the pump body. I'll tell you, once you get used to pumps with the unions, it's pretty nice. You can get them in and out really quickly, and you don't have to worry about that gasket in there going bad after time, and you got to go back and crank the bolts because it's leaking out of the flange gasket.
And one of the things that's in the catalog that we'll have available later this year is a ball valve too, with a little green handle. So an example of that would be, the quick setter that you could put it on the bottom of the picture here, and you'd have isolation on both sides of that quick setter. Or some of the other balancing valves that they're in California, they said you have to have isolation on this valve. So we even have a handle extension too to get past the insulation if you have to insulate something like a 127 cartridge style balancing valve. But you could put that on almost anything. Everything that we've talked about with that G-thread, there's probably a case that it would be nice to have isolation right upstream of it, and you don't have to transition to press or copper or anything else. You can just go G-thread to G-thread, kind of like this the sensor. Yeah,
so it's a male thread by a female thread ball valve, and it has a swivel nut on the female thread and a male thread, kind of like that gauge well that Max just pointed out there. So you could screw it on any 1-inch G thread and have an isolation for it. So that's going to be pretty nice for both plumbing and hydronic. It's a lead-free valve also, and it's a nice quality ball valve. We didn't go with a cheapo one, a thin brass. It's got nice double stem O-ring and stuff like that. So it's a good quality heavy brass valve.
Say, Bob, we had a question here too, and I think it's a good one, especially we were talking about G-thread. Somebody asked if they missed it, and they were curious why it's called a G-thread. And I've always heard of it called a G-thread or a gas thread, or a BSPP is a more common term too. Do you have any other reasoning behind G-thread or gas thread?
That's exactly when I researched it a little bit. I saw the word GAS, because that's how they say gas in Italy is gas, or I don't know how to pronounce it over there, but that's what I heard too. It stood for gas thread, and I don't know why that is, but it's also called a BSP thread. So it's, it seems to have a lot of different names for it, but G thread is just kind of what I've always known it as, and I heard the same thing. It was gas.
Yeah, and two, I will say, you know, BSP stands for British Standard Parallel, or British Standard Pipe, and then BSPP is parallel and BSPT is tapered. So they do make a tapered British Standard pipe thread. Do you see it over here that much, Bob? I usually just see the parallel stuff, not
Well,
the tapered.
and when I do see it, somebody sent it by mistake, because we had that, I guess Caleffi sent an order of them by mistake once. People said, we can't get this thread to seal. Shriners started looking at it. He said, well, they sent a GSP parallel thread by mistake, because there must be some market in the world that uses that. But yeah, it can get frustrating when you have the wrong. It's a really precision thread. But you know, the nice thing about the guys that do work with pipe over in Europe and use the straight thread on both ends is you can end up wherever you want to, because you don't have to keep turning the pipe until it goes tight. So as long as you've got about 4 threads engaged on your fitting, so when you cut a piece of pipe, your makeup is always exactly right. If you want a 32-inch piece of pipe to get your fittings 33 inches apart, with a straight thread, you can just turn it until you get your makeup, because the, you know, the hemp or the whatever you're using is making the seal, not the taper to it. So that's their reasoning for liking that straight thread when they do pipe fitting over there.
Yeah, they definitely think we're crazy, the fact that we're doing NPT and we're binding on the threads to make the seal, and they're just looking at us going, there's such an easier way, you know, why are you doing this?
I'll try and get a good thread these days on some of the low carbon steel pipe that,
Yeah.
you know, chips and breaks and rips, and you know, brand new fittings, you look inside and the thread's all ripped. All right, I don't want to burn up too much of your guys' time either. What do we got here? Yeah, so I don't know, you know, you look at job pictures all over on Facebook or Instagram or heating help, wherever you might go, and I think copper is still pretty much the predominant tubing that we use, at least in hydronics. Plumbing probably more PEX these days, or down south you see more of the PVC and CPVC, but you know, the copper tube seems to be, yeah, occasionally you'll see a threaded job. You know, somebody likes to thread pipe and screw things together, but knowing that copper tube is a predominant tube, you've got choices now on how you're going to make that connection. So, you know, all my career, it's been a sweat connection for the most part, but here over the last, what, maybe 20, 30 years, maybe Eric knows the history on when the press fitting first came into the US market. That seems to be taken over for a number of reasons, and I think good reasons. I think probably the biggest, when I talked to installers out in California, they said liability. There's some of the buildings, even if the code or the fire marshal didn't allow it, the building owners won't let you in on a job site with a torch, with a welder, anything that could start a fire in the building. It says right on their mechanical rooms, you know, no open flame, no grinders, no welders, nothing like that. So that's where the press technology really, you know, has a good place. In addition to, you know, you can do a wet connection with it if you can't get the water turned off 100%. As long as you're going to get electrocuted using your press tool, you know, that's another nice feature for it. And if you use our tailpiece as shown on the right there, you've got a union connection. So if you have to service whatever you just put together, even if it's just a straight union, you've got the ability to get it apart. Because that's the downside, I guess, of a press fitting, if there's any, is you can't reuse it. You know, a solder fitting, if you really want to, you can take it apart, clean it out, and use it again. But once it's been crimped, you're done. So with that in mind, you might want to use a tailpiece with a union nut. So if you have to get in there, you're not cutting out a fitting and putting a repair coupling next to a fitting to put it back together, because now you cut the length out of your tube by cutting the fitting out. And there's a lot of options now. You know, when they first came out, you had one brand and you only had a handful of selection of fittings, but now there's adapters and fittings and valves and crossovers and all sorts of different types of fittings available. So, but yeah, and then, you know, the other options are maybe I shouldn't even say the word, the grip type of fitting. I won't even say the brand name on that. You know, we all love to hate them, but I imagine probably pretty much everybody on this list at one point or another has used a grip type of fitting that, you know, it's got the little stainless gripper ring in there that you just slide it on. The beauty of that, I see the attraction, is that it fits anything that has a CTS, copper tube size pipe. It'll fit on the PVC, the PEX, the copper, CPVC if it's a CTS type of pipe. But I don't know, some people think it's maybe a little bit too handyman or do-it-yourself are looking, and they're not exactly cheap. So you've got options, but we're going to focus in on that crimper because we got the kind people from Milwaukee are going to be up here in a couple minutes, and they're going to talk about the how they've really evolved with the tool, the tools, I should say. There's multiple different ones now that can work that, because that was one of the other big issues when it first came out. Was the tool was awkward. You didn't have a lot of, they were too big to get into places. Now they've got different tongs available that you can get in close quarters. They've got cordless ones that they didn't have when I first got mine, and they've got different sizes that you can go up to. So, the tool to do all this work has really evolved, and that makes it, I think, a little bit more user friendly for the small shops. It's a big investment, so making an affordable tool with a lot of size ranges, it sure helps. So, all right.
Bob, I was going to mention too, and it came up here in the questions pane. As far as recognizing BSPP threaded connections, like a tailpiece that maybe got sent from a European market and things like that, usually you'll find them where they almost look like they've been chewed on and stuff like that. They'll kind of have a serrated edge on it and everything like that. And you mentioned it before, that serrated is, to help hold that hemp or that string on there and everything else to make sure it doesn't go away or, peel off and things like that. Now, and in other cases too, they'll use a set of channel locks, and they'll just or they'll use all kinds of things. A hacksaw, I've seen them do all kinds of crazy things to make that stuff stick. So just be careful with that.
Yeah.
But it's a good way to recognize those types of fittings if you haven't seen them before. Is it looks like it's got teeth on it.
Yeah. And over there in Europe, they call it a hemp thread because that's typically what they have used. Now, some people Loctite them, some people just put 20 wraps of Teflon tape around them and cross their fingers and jam them in two. But again, that's not what's making the seal. So anyways, what else do we have here? Oh, I guess we're up to the show. What time we got? Yeah, we're on schedule here. We're up to the Showdown.
I think all you guys are a little crazy that you wouldn't just transition to plastic. I mean, this is the outside of that valve, just go right to PEX. You go right to a 1960 expansion. You're moving fast. You've got flexible pipe. People aren't stealing it from the job site. They don't see that shiny copper and run away with it.
I just find it ironic because all my kids' toys are made out of plastic too, and now the piping's made out of plastic. I don't know why anybody'd want to give up their torch. They've got their torch, they can solder their pipes, and they can heat up their Dinty Moore beef stew for lunch. It's just like a match made in heaven.
Okay, Max, I'm not even gonna argue against plastic, but I'm gonna put Cody in his place. Listen to me, Max. If I came to you and I said, hey, I've got this tub of this toxic goo that I'm going to give you a little tiny paintbrush, and I'm going to ask you to put it on this copper, and then don't touch your eyes or your mouth, or God forbid, if you taste the stuff, it's going to make you want to throw up. And then I'm going to have you go get this torch, and we need some kind of filler metal to make this joint work, and all kinds of skill, like the art of the trade, blah 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 blah, freaking blah. All right, I want to push a button, I want to get onto my next job, and I want to do it all without burning down the apartment building, without wondering, did I make that joint, or is it going to leak later on? No, you know why it's not going to leak later on? Because it's a proven technology that just works. So Cody, sit down. We're not going to sweat any pipe anytime soon. And Max, you know what, to be honest with you, I think PEX is fine, but do we really trust it for high temperature applications? No, that's where copper shines.
If you're doing something that you need more than 180 degrees Fahrenheit at 100 PSI, we probably need to talk about your job anyway. That's what it's qualified to do and is stamped on the side of the pipe. And I'll go even further. I think that Eric's points are great about just pulling a trigger. Why would you cut and ream and sand and get your hands all dirty? You take a piece of PEX and you cut it like butter. There's no copper shaving that's gonna get stuck in your pump, and then you just put it together, and it takes like 2 minutes to even do a big fitting, and it's
no. Speaking of putting things together, I want to see what magic tools you guys have to take apart press fittings and to take apart PEX fittings. So show them to me. I want to see them.
See,
Bob talked about it earlier. The only thing you're getting out is the cutting wheel. I mean, you're cut hacksaw, whatever,
you get your hair dryer out. You get your hair dryer out, and you can take the PEX fitting off, cut that off, and start over a little bit shorter.
I knew that my wife's hair dryer would work well in my toolbox. So,
what I will say is some of the prettiest jobs that I see on Instagram are the ones that are sweat together. There's a fellow from France right now that has all that bent copper on there. That's all.
Yeah.
that's art. So if you want a pretty looking job where there's no big gob of anything on the outside, I'll tell you, a nice sweat job is, especially the guys that sand all the solder so you can't even tell there's solder and it looks like it's been molded on there. So, when I'm doing artistic stuff, if you want it to be really pretty, it's hard to beat a sweat copper joint, and they're not going to go away by any means, but pick your poison or mix and match them, I guess is what I would say. I don't know that there's a clear winner there, but.
What I just heard is that Bob likes sweat fittings and you guys are all just, you're
It's
out.
a
Sorry.
big 2-horse race
Well,
now for sweat.
I think in reality, Bob is retired from the trade, and so we don't, we can listen to what he has to say because he has a lot to teach us from experience. But moving forward, I want to point out a couple of things that was brought up real quick. In my defense, or for my argument, Bob, you made a really good point. You can't bring torches onto a lot of job sites, and I'm not trying to be funny here. This is true. In a hospital situation where you might have fire watch requirements for up to 12 hours after piping is put together. I mean, press technology, PEX, even in that situation, could very well be the difference between getting a job finished and done safely and within a certain amount of time that you're allowed to do it. Maybe it's overnight work, or maybe it's while they're taking people out of a specific wing so you can actually perform this work and then have to get those patients back in the case of the hospital. Or restaurants. A lot of kitchens and stuff require commissioning and re-inspection after piping has been changed and the place has been torn apart. Get the job done faster with press, and you're gonna get that kitchen back up and running a lot faster.
One thing I will
exactly with.
If you pick up a can of whatever your favorite solder flux is and read the ingredients on there, and one of the ingredients in solder flux is chlorides, and what is the one thing you don't want to put in your stainless steel boilers is chlorides. So think of a job where you sweat a bunch of 2-inch copper pipe, you didn't flush it out, the guy was putting too much flux on to begin with, and now you've got, a pint of chlorides in your system that are going to start going after your stainless steel. So yeah, you definitely want it. And that changed when they went to water soluble fluxes years ago. They used to have acid in your fluxes, tinning acid and stuff like that, but it had to be water soluble and meet the NSF. So now we have chlorides.
I think Cody has been drinking a little too much of that flux, is what I say.
I think that all you guys are still crazy on a long enough timeline that copper is going to start to scale, and you're going to start to get a smaller and smaller and smaller orifice. If you look at PEX that's 30 years old, it looks like it was the day that you put it in, and I think it's a better system long term.
I don't know if it's just the paint chips over here at my house that taste really good, but I'm just thinking you guys are just taking the skill out of the trade. I mean, you want to fight, let's bring it.
If you want to make something look more
you
terrible than a
tool
poorly
guys,
soldered,
you guys are.
You can make any fitting system look bad or crooked for sure. You can press poorly, you can sweat poorly, and you can do PEX poorly.
I was gonna say it definitely takes the right breed to do anything wrong, and if you're bound and determined to do it, you can do it wrong too. So
yeah. Leave it to me. I can make a mistake any day of the week. I'll admit to that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, should we throw it to the vote? Does anybody have any last minute arguments for their pipe? I'll say that I'd rather lift 2-inch PEX over my head for a week than 2-inch copper.
All right,
I win. We won't even do the poll.
No,
we'll just close it.
Sounds like you need to hit the gym, Max. That's what it sounds like. Or whatever. I mean.
All right. Well, why don't we put it to the audience, and we'll see who our winner is here.
Run this for a couple.
Don't be bashful. We know everybody's got a B tank on their truck. Come on, guys.
I honestly don't know where my torch is, you guys. I'm being totally serious. I know there's a little hand torch tank on my van someplace, but it would take me 5 minutes to find it.
I use mine for starting the grill on a regular basis at home, so I know exactly where it is.
All right.
I could very well be the last time I used mine was to start a fire. Yes.
You know what?
Oh, look at that. Look at that, Max. You actually came in last.
At least I beat Max.
I think we need to find more of a West Coast audience, people who appreciate PEX in the future. This is out of control here.
Now I need to go back outside and bring my press tool back in and tell her that I didn't mean all those things that I said earlier. So.
Right, we agree there's probably a good mix, and then I'll take my third loss in a row and can sit on that for the rest of the week. Okay, well, we already had our audience decide, so now what we're going to do is we're going to talk more about our giveaway. So why don't we have Alec Dietzel, do you want to toggle on your camera there? So he joined Milwaukee in 2018. He's part of the plumbing product management team. He's directly responsible for the strategy and product development for the company's press tool category, which is the right expert to have here today. Prior to joining Milwaukee, he worked as a mechanical engineer in the aerospace industry and also went to Notre Dame and has a mechanical engineering degree. So you're just the person we want to talk to about our big winner tonight press. So take it away.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Max, for the intro. I really appreciate it. And thanks for inviting me to join the show. So it's a pleasure to be here. So we'll start out with a little history lesson. So way back in 2012, Milwaukee introduced the Force Logic press tools into the market with the intent of fundamentally changing the way plumbers and mechanical contractors work. So today, Milwaukee's press tool lineup consists of 4 tools, each designed specifically to meet the unique needs of the different contractors that have actually joined us on the show today. So collectively, this platform enables installers to press the entire size range of more than 20 unique fitting systems, all in the smallest, most intelligent press tools in the industry. So if we want to jump to the next slide here. So taking a look at the lineup, you'll notice that every tool features an inline design that allows for unrivaled access in tight spaces, enabling contractors to make presses around installed pipes where other tools just can't. Across Milwaukee press tool lineup, you also see that each tool features what we call auto cycle and a pre-press battery check to eliminate partial presses. But where these tools really shine is in how they're ergonomically optimized and right-sized to your needs. So if you're a residential plumber, for instance, installing primarily PEX, the M18 short throw press tool, so the one all the way over on the left, is going to offer you a more productive alternative to manual crimping tools, enabling hundreds of PEX connections on just a single charge. If your work is focused in residential and more small multifamily homes, and you find yourself working with more pipe materials than just PEX, the M12 Force Logic press tool is going to provide the versatility to press copper, carbon steel, PEX, and even more. For the mechanical contractors or the commercial plumbers that are needing to work with the larger sizes, the best solution is going to be the M18 Force Logic press tool with one key, which not only provides the versatility to press copper, carbon steel, PEX, and more, but it delivers the capability to press up to 4-inch copper with a tool that weighs almost as little as competitive units that can only press up to 1 1/4. And finally, if you're a contractor looking for one tool that can press all the fitting sizes available on the market, the long throw press tool will offer just that. It's going to allow you to press everything the standard M18 Force Logic press tool will, while also enabling connections on all the way up to 4-inch carbon steel. But now let's get down to the details of the tool we'll be giving away today. So to kick off 2021, Milwaukee took the next step in press tool intelligence with the launch of the M18 Force Logic press tool with one key. So today's lucky giveaway winner will not only win the industry's smallest full-size press tool, but the winner will also have the ability to now leverage one key connectivity in the tool to take both quality assurance and fleet management to the next level. So press data is logged on the tool where it can be wirelessly retrieved on your mobile device or desktop computer. So Milwaukee's One Key desktop app will allow you to access customizable reports of successful tool operation that you'll be able to share with inspectors and other stakeholders. And if you're a foreman or a tool crib manager who has joined the call and you manage an entire fleet of press tools, this is going to allow you to monitor the utilization across your entire fleet of press tools so that you can optimize the placement at each individual job site. And finally, utilizing the industry's largest tracking network in one key, you'll be able to locate and protect your tool across all your active job sites and storage areas. If the tool goes missing, it can be marked lost in one key, and a notice is going to be sent to you containing its location the next time it's seen by our network. When out on a job site, you have the ability to set a geofence around the entire perimeter and be alerted immediately if that tool walks off the site. And in the unfortunate circumstance that that were to happen, this is the only press tool on the market that has security capability, meaning that the tool can be locked out in the one key platform, rendering the tool virtually useless until it's unlocked by its rightful owner. Now with that, I want to wish the best of luck to all of our listeners who have joined the call. And now I'll turn it back over to Max for the giveaway.
Okay, so we are going to use a Wheel of Fortune type thing. We're going to have Mary take over the presenter and give it a spin. So the way that we didn't list everybody's full names on the screen or anything, but we'll have a number, which is the order that you registered, and then first and last initial. So that's what we'll spin. And then it is going to, it'll pop up and make it easier to see when it lands on the number. So go ahead, Mary, give that a spin.
All righty. Cross your fingers, everybody.
Good luck.
How many times did you enter me, Mary?
Cody. Now that's not fair.
And you have to be present to win. So, okay, let's look for 80 CJ. Okay, Connor Julian, are you in the audience? It looks like he's here. All right, we have a winner. So Connor Julian, you're gonna get the full kit. Do you want to recap what's in the kit with the batteries and the jaws and stuff?
Yep, so in that kit, you're gonna have 1/2 inch all the way up to 2-inch CTS jaws. So that's gonna be your copper jaws. And then you're also gonna have a couple 2.0 M18 batteries as well, complete with a BMC for carrying.
So you got the premium kit. This isn't
Absolutely.
just a tool only. We're talking the full premium press tool. So thank you again for donating the Milwaukee Tool here. You've got a lot of press fans on the line. So why don't we open it up to just general questions about connections for any of us that have been on the show so far. If you've got tool questions that you want to ask Alex, so what you're going to do is type those into the question pane, and then we'll just kind of read them off, and then I'll make it easier than opening up the microphones. And then Cody, if you had any lined up that you think would be good to start with, go for it.
Yeah, there was actually a lot of good questions that came in the pre-submitted questions, like when you guys all registered and everything like that. So there's a lot of good ones there, and then tons of comments here that I'm weeding through on the GoToWebinar side. You know, some of these questions were really very subjective and very, you know, it's all based on preference in a lot of cases. But there was one particular question that it seems pretty interesting, but you know, after the water's been shut off, what's the best way to stop the last remaining water when sweating a fitting? I'm sure a lot of you guys have used the bread trick. There's some tools out there, I believe it's called Jet Sweat, that it puts like a rubber plug in there so it stops all the water from coming out. So there's different ways of doing that. There was a question that came up about direct burial, and Eric, are you on board here still? We wanted to talk about basically about the idea. You still there, Eric?
Yeah. Sorry, I had to unmute myself, so I'll put myself
that's all
on
right.
camera here.
You were just talking to yourself for a minute or so.
Yeah, I think so. So the direct burial comes down to a couple different things. So check with your manufacturer of the fitting that you use, and then check your local code that you have to follow. But first and foremost, pretty much all the manufacturers for copper will allow and have met the requirements for direct burial. And there's one thing we are talking about press.
We're talking about press, right? That's what we were.
Yeah, so
we want to preface that.
That's the next thing.
Press
yeah,
fittings.
So copper press. That's one thing you have to consider. So you're talking about non-ferrous copper. You can bury, and then there's the other side of that coin. It wasn't really in the question, but it's worth bringing up, I think, and that means, or that would be whether or not you're talking about burying a copper fitting in the dirt, like under a slab, or if you're or outside the building or something like that, or if you're talking about embedding it in concrete. So when it's embedded, then it has to be, and it's copper, it has to be protected. And you'll find both of the answers to those questions probably within the code that you have to follow wherever you're working.
Perfect. That's a great explanation. Yeah, it's all about where you're at, because there are certain places too that don't even allow PEX, for example, in certain job sites and things like that. I think Chicago is one of them that doesn't allow PEX unless it's like a radiant heating job kind of thing. There was another good question. I think you're a great guy to ask this question to, Eric. You do a lot of pressing and things like that. What's the best way to keep pipe square and plumb when you're pressing? And I feel the pain here, because you touch that trigger and then all of a sudden the pipe just goes, it does one of those numbers, and it kills me on the inside. What do you do?
I don't have a lot of really cool tricks, and here's why. I rely on my pipe supports first and foremost. So if I'm using a good solid pipe support that's going to hold the pipe either square or plumb, or level or plumb, I guess, then that's what I'm going to rely on. There's some tricks that you can see in some tutorials on the videos, whether it's from Milwaukee or the other press tool guys. Generally rotating the position of the tool, maybe whether it be like up and then down, one side of the fitting to the next. But ultimately, to be honest with you, I've been pressing for like 20 years, and I found the best way to do it is just strap the hell out of your pipe and then press it together. And then, like, my pipe's not going to go anywhere. So works for me. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I've always found that, like, when you get that pipe in that fitting, if it'll kind of tip a little bit one way or the other before you press it, and usually you want to try and get it somewhere right in the middle, and then if you're going all the way to one direction to try and make it work, chances are it's not going to go very well for you when you hit the trigger. So that's an interesting one there too. Another interesting one that came in here too about pressing soft copper. Have you had an experience with that? I know we did soft copper for gas lines and stuff like that on occasion, but what are your thoughts on pressing that?
Well, so all the manufacturers have specs on this. You'd be surprised. The major ones are going to say you can press soft copper up to 2-inch, and so not sure where that different, what at 2-inch, where why that's the stopping point. I'm not exactly sure. It has to do with some kind of testing and certifications and things like that. That's over my head. But pressing soft copper in smaller diameters, I've been doing it since ever and never had any issues, because the soft copper we're using is type L, so it's just tempered copper is all it is.
Sure. Now this is a question for Bob too. I think Bob might have some experience of this one, and feel free to chime in there, Eric, as well. When transitioning from different types of pipe, and there's a word that gets used here in this particular question. It's almost a 4-letter word. It's called Kitec. That transitioning from Kitec, old Kitec tubing, to a new system or a new heating system, it's getting hard to find fittings. Do you know of any fittings that might be out there that can help with transitioning to different types of piping?
Well, the Caleffi one was adjustable, because we made manifolds for Kitec. Warm-Right, I guess, was the brand way back when. So is our PEX fitting still adjustable enough to fit Kitec? Yes. It's got a range, and I think it's right in the catalog now, the OD range that it'll accommodate, because we use what's called a segmented olive is the official word for it. So when you look at a Caleffi PEX fitting, the little ring that goes around the outside of the tube has all these little slots cut it this way. So it's got a lot of adjustability, both if it has to open up a little bit, but also to be able to squeeze down to a smaller diameter. So our PEX fitting will accommodate it. Now, we don't have a lot of like T's and elbows and combinations, but the actual nut, which we can put on pretty much anything, will accommodate that tube. So if you come up against that, we can get you back to square one. In fact, I had somebody call me the other day, was trying to get from polybutylene to regular PEX, and Sioux Chief doesn't make transition fittings for that, by the way, but our fitting would also take up that tolerance, because the ODs are pretty similar there, or the ID is what's different on the polybutylene to PEX. It's the ID issue. So
yeah, and I think it's good to mention too, Bob, that like our fitting that goes from PEX LPEX to transition over to whatever you're working with, we've got a sweat fitting and like a standard PEX fitting. It is not low lead. Okay, so you're talking hydronic use only. So if you are working with Kitec and potable applications, you're looking somewhere else.
Good point. All right.
There was a question about pressing on like baseboard if you were going to press on baseboard with thin copper. And Andy Mickelson with Mechanical Hub had a great video with that. It's probably 2 months ago, or with the insert with the thinner wall copper and pressing on it with a zone valve. I think he was chopping in there, and that was really good. I think that was a great explanation if you can dig that up. But yeah, the little insert makes it, otherwise you're just going to deform it if it's too thin. So that'll look more like a proper press fitting if you do it with the insert.
Yeah, it's crazy with this copper that they make fin tube baseboard with. I don't know how they get away with calling it type M copper, but it's like the thinnest copper that's ever been manufactured ever. And I can tell you with either my M18 or my M12 press tool, no problems as long as you have the insert fitting. And a couple different manufacturers have those out there. They're worth keeping on your in your fitting box if you find yourself working with making repairs in the middle of winter, people's baseboards are breaking, things like that. No better place, in my opinion, to break out your press tool. As long as you've got those inserts, you can make repairs super fast.
But with a torch, you could also get them a new floor too. I mean, I don't know what the big deal is here. You could one foul swoop,
the insurance money and everything.
Yeah, collect the insurance money. They're getting a new house and everything.
Set out their smoke alarms.
No, honestly though, well, in that situation though, it is worth bringing up. Cody, you try to make the soldering joke or the case for it, but Alec would back me up on this. That press tool shines in the situation where we're trying to fix like a baseboard heater down at the floor, and this copper is so terrible and it's so gross, and the broken pipe, and it's 35 below zero outside. You can't drain those pipes out. There's nowhere to, you can't drain them out. I've sucked water out with my vacuum and all this kind of stuff. And that press tool, boom, boom, honestly, you're in and out in just a few minutes. You can make the repairs, and they're reliable. They really are.
No, I'm with you. I might sound a little belligerent. It is about beer o'clock here in Wisconsin and everything like that. Every hour is beer o'clock, but it's one of those things where every application has its necessity, and I've pressed, I've done packs, I've done sweating for a long time, whatever works best for you. So, but I definitely do enjoy my little 12-volt press tool that I've got here sitting about 10 feet away. So.
You just have to go apologize to it for.
I know. Just earmuffs, press tool. It's okay.
Well, so yeah. I move on to next week, or do you see any other questions that we should bring to the group?
No, I think a lot of the questions were really great questions and everything like that, Max. I think some of them are getting a little more off the deep end as far as as far as questions go. So any questions that we didn't answer, we'll try to get back to you on regarding a longer answer, or maybe some supporting materials and things like that. But we'll definitely get back to you. I don't know if you saw anything, Bob, that tripped your trigger there.
No, somebody did put a comment that Dahl, the people that make the mini ball valves, apparently have a transition fitting available. So whoever was asking that question, you maybe look. I don't know what size they have available. What else did I see there? No, a lot of.
Yeah, if you typed in a Milwaukee Tool question too, one of us will follow up, and if it's something specific for Milwaukee, we'll have Alec reach out to you. So.
Well, and I'll say there's a good one here too, and I'll push your product there, Alec. Is the 12-volt press good enough for water heaters and small boilers? Personally, I own the M12 press tool. It comes with up to 1-inch jaws, but you can buy 1 1/4-inch jaw for copper. Thing works beautifully. I've got the bigger battery on there. I can do water heaters over and over and over again, no problem. I've done full boiler jobs with it as well. The thing works like $1 million. So if you're talking smaller residential type contractor, I think that 12-volt will be perfect. If you're starting to talk about pressing black iron and things like that, then obviously you're looking into those bigger tools for sure. Was that adequate, Alec? Was that a good sales pitch for me? All right, awesome.
Well said.
You guys make a great tool, and we really appreciate you guys teaming up with us here and everything like that to get Connor hooked up, and congratulations again to Connor. So.
All right, so next month, Cody and I are going to argue about PRVs at the end. So this will be a good one. Should you, and it's kind of more on the hydronic side, should you turn off your autofill valve or not? And I feel like that's one of the the most argued about things in our industry. So that'll be at the end. And then my dad's going to talk about pressure reducing valves for the first half again. That's going to be Monday, April 26th. And Mechanical Hub's going to be hosting that one as well. And that takes us to the end of the show. So thanks again for attending. Congratulations to our tool winner. Thanks to Milwaukee, and we'll see you soon.
See you guys.
Thanks, everybody.